Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a special edition of the CoinGeek Weekly Live Stream. I am your host, Mr. Kurt Wuckert Jr., broadcasting live from a mountain hideaway. I am in hiding, staying away from the lizards as much as possible, getting a little bit of fresh air and seeing some mountain autumnal colors. Doing my very best. Thank you for watching live. Thank you for your doing the like, subscribe, hit the alert bell thing. Really helps us out. Our digital overlords definitely are checking to see who is actually enjoying the content so they can reward me with magic beans, probably. So I appreciate you, everybody. If you could share this show around right now, this is going to be a live Ask Me Anything show. So I do indeed need you to be participating in the show. The guest today is you. So I'm here to answer your questions. I'm here to talk about whatever it is that you want to talk about. So if you have a conundrum in your life that you can, you only need me to solve, only Kurt Wuckert Jr. can solve live on the air for CoinGeek.com, well, now is your opportunity. It is going to happen, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. That is, of course, unless there is some sort of unfortunate circumstance with my my other stuff, the typical stuff that you might see, the problems of the internet. But I think we're doing okay. So I want to thank our sponsors before we get kicked off. Rock Wallet. If you go to rockwallet.com, they allow you the completely non-custodial control of your Bitcoin Core, Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin SV, Ethereum, Ethereum-based stablecoins, and Money, MNEE, the money stablecoin, the first, the only, the best gasless stablecoin on earth. Anytime you've ever tried to send somebody some USDC or USDT using Ethereum or Polygon or any of the other blockchains that it's on, you can send them $1, but they can do nothing with it unless you also send them the gas token, which would be Ethereum or Polygon or whatever else. So they cannot just receive the money that they want or need. They need two things, and they need to understand that they need sufficient gas fees to resend that. And on networks like Ethereum, sometimes that's 5 cents, and sometimes it's 50 cents, and sometimes it's $5, and sometimes it's $50. And in the last 2 months, it has been as high as $500 for a single transaction. So can you send somebody $1 or $2 or $5 on Ethereum? The answer is maybe. And with money, MNEE stablecoin, you can send a penny. You can send 10 cents. You can send 1/10 of a cent, and you do not need any gas. And so that opens up all kinds of opportunities for you to do micro and macro commerce in the dollar denomination. My goodness, what a world it is. Thank you, rockwallet.com, for your sponsorship of this show. And I'm not just talking about them because they are a sponsor. I am a user. Gorilla Pool, the company at which I am the highest ranking human officer, uses Rock Wallet in its own business. We receive payments in it. We use their exchanging features. It has been a wonderful, high-quality experience for us, which is why we decided that we would have them as a sponsor here on the CoinGeek Weekly live stream. So as we start thinking about all the stuff that we can talk about today, a couple of things. Mr. Producer, when it comes time to start asking the questions or whatever, we can fill the box. We can put them on screen, a little bit easier, a little bit more interactive. I am doing this show from my laptop, so if you see me like looking down more than typical, it's because I don't have my whole setup, which is typical. I look through the glass and into your eyes and into your soul and all the rest of that. So we're going to cut to an ad in about 30 seconds here, and then after the ad, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Blockchain Futurist Conference, which was a really good time. I got to see my old friends Tracy and Laura Leparullo, and Mayar, whose last name I don't know, but I'm pretty sure he's Tracy's husband and or life partner of sorts. So they're Canadian. I don't know the Canadian conventions on how to do the naming and all this stuff, but it's a good time. They're good people, and they put on a really good show. So we'll talk a little bit about that after the break, but I'm going to take a quick, that was not a clear breather. This mountain air has my sinuses confused. So I'm going to take a breather. I'm going to take a little sippy of my water, and we're going to be right back. All right. So if you want to read about my experience at Blockchain Futurist Conference, you can absolutely do that. And I did not pin it, but I think it's my most recent post or two on x.com. And you can read about what it was like at the Blockchain Futurist Conference. And I start out talking about how this is not my first Blockchain Futurist Conference. In fact, back when I was Kurt at CryptoTradersPro.com and all of that jazz, I went to a Blockchain Futurist Conference in 2018 in Toronto. This is back in the good old days. I got to sit in the green room with like Larry King and sit and talk about what was going on. This was why Michael Saylor was just running his little empire doing whatever it was he was doing. And there I was talking to the people in the back. Roger Ver was a speaker. I got to meet Kyle Kemper, who I've now become pretty good friends with. Whole bunch of others. So lots of people from the space, like Vitalik Buterin was floating around. I did not talk to him. Charles Hoskinson was in the room. I also did not talk to him. Wasn't a big fan of them at the time either, but much the same as I feel today. But the show itself was fantastic. So going back to Toronto, Toronto had its own internal money to the city called Buns, and it was sort of a proto-cryptocurrency. I think it actually did not run in distributed consensus. It runs on some kind of database and works kind of like a coupon system. But the Buns BTZ as in zebra was pretty useful. I was able to buy some stuff with the Buns currency around town, and that was pretty fun. And then basically just kind of became friends with the people that put on the show. I spoke a little later in 2018 at the Chicago-based Loyalty Live conference, which was primarily about loyalty points and in-person commerce. So using tokens on the blockchain and smart contracts to give people rewards. And the premise is that part of the reason part of the reason that people like to pay with credit cards is that they get rewards points, which makes a lot of sense. If you're like a Amex Platinum member or like a Chase Sapphire member or whatever, they give you all these rewards. Typically it's an airline points or the kind of things that you can cash in and, go get your back rubbed at the Four Seasons and that kind of thing. And those are fun. And the idea is that, hey, if we can start to do that kind of thing with blockchain tech, then maybe people will be interested in spending Bitcoin or some other token in the real world using, at point of sale, like, hey, can I pay with USDC and still get some rewards back and whatever. So it was a discussion about that. I gave a presentation about why we need to be paying with Bitcoin, and it was a good time. Then the pandemic and all this stuff kicked off. I didn't see the Blockchain Futurist people for years. And then coming back to Fort Lauderdale, I saw that it was happening, and I live like 30 minutes away from Fort Lauderdale. I was like, you know what? We're assembling a team. And so there was a whole montage. We had Carl, who likes to come along to these things, and he busts out the so when we do the assembling a team montage, like Carl pulls up in his McLaren, hops out. It's very what's that show with the guy with the red hair? Horatio. Shoot, what is the damn show called? I need the Who playing in the background. Yeah. And then I need do I have sunglasses? I don't have sunglasses. I can just say he's not going glasses off anywhere. And then, okay. Anyways, for all you people that don't know my references, I'm just a total jackass. But if you're still here and would like to fill the troll box with questions, I'm looking forward to answering your questions. But I'm gonna monologue here for another minute or two about the Blockchain Futurist Conference. So we did London Blockchain like a little less than a month ago, and then in stark contrast, London and Fort Lauderdale could not be more different cities. And ultimately, had a really good time. It was great being outside. They had like these wonderful outdoor spaces, which kind of suck in the sun, get a little too hot, and get a little sunburny, but as soon as the sun starts to drop down the horizon, it's like this beautiful, mild, lovely weather. Everybody's hanging out outside. A lot of conversation. There were a lot of cool people talking about cool things. The Peace Through Transparency blockchain people really stood out to me. I talk a little bit about them in my article, but they're smart. They seem like the kind of people, me being like a BSV maximalist, I look at them and say, ooh, okay, they're competitive people. Now, we didn't go into the technicals of their blockchain. I don't know, the scalability and all this other stuff. But what I did understand is just how much work they've put into like regulatory compliance and making things legal in jurisdictions that really matter. And so they base their company and their foundation and their stuff in Singapore, which makes them instantly neutral. It gives them access to basically anything that's part of the Commonwealth of the UK, which is like half the planet. and really good stuff all around. So met some good people, got to catch up with Tracy and Laura and Mehar, and had a really good time. Oh, it just occurred to me, CSI Miami. That's the damn show. So every time I pull like a human hand out of an alligator's mouth, you gotta just say like, well, let's give this guy a hand, and then they play the Who music and whatever else. So let's start taking some of these questions. I can see some of them flowing, as it were. But Mr. Producer, let's start putting them. Oh my God, how could this start without messy times? Indeed, sir. Hey, I'd love to have you back on anytime. Christopher Messina, one of my favorite guys in the whole world. He has more experience than almost anybody I know on more topics. So I like to think of myself as something of a Renaissance man. And Christopher's always like, oh yeah, I went there and I knew him and I shook their hand and I climbed that mountain and everything else. And so he's one of those guys that's done a little bit of everything and been a little everywhere. So, Christopher, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your comment. Let's start in with the questions. Kurt, could you have Calvin Ayre or some representative from N-Chain on to explain, among other things, how Kristen Ager-Hansen came to be hired? That is a very spicy question, and frankly, above my pay grade. As far as CAH goes and all that stuff, I don't know. Couldn't tell you. The dude's, I don't know. I don't know what you know about gnomes, but if you get into Scandinavian mythology, this question starts to answer itself. So be careful out there, everybody. Basic question from Longshot Louie, and I'm not dodging you. I just honestly don't know, Reed, so I really can't speak on it. This is a basic question I know, but can you explain how the BSV goes from Bob to Alice and what the miners actually do and when, assuming the BSV already exists, is just moving from Bob to Alice? This is a really great question, and it's not that basic, actually. So if you talk a little bit about single ledger accounting versus double ledger accounting versus triple ledger accounting, you kind of have to understand both. So if I hand my friend a quarter or a peso or a shekel anywhere on earth, I am simply making a single ledger movement. Like, here's a buck, right? And that is what it is. Now, when you do double ledger accounting, which is like what all business is based on for the last 500 plus years in the civilized world, when I make a debit, it becomes a credit on somebody else's ledger, or when they make a debit, it becomes a credit on my ledger back to me. And you have this accounting akin to how you would balance a checkbook. So any of you people who have gray hair and or Kurt hair, then you may remember learning how to balance a checkbook. And if you're a little younger than that, then you don't. But you can go back and reconcile with your CPA. You can ask your CPA, hey, can you explain to me what double ledger accounting is? It's pretty simple once you understand what's happening, and that's all good, well and good. The triple ledger is when you have a third party that comes out and attests to the state of all things, and they attest to it with some sort of authority. So think something like a notary that is going over your stuff, or it's kind of like how your CPA signs it, except your CPA is bought by you or he's paid for by you, and so it's a little less accountable in that regard. Like, he may be colluding with you to incorrectly or maliciously balance your books. The third party is a true third party that just makes sure that the state of things is completely valid across the board. So those are the parties. You have Bob, you have Alice, and you have the miners, right? The miners attest to the state of things. Now, you don't actually have the coin. You don't control the coin. You control a key that unlocks an envelope called a UTXO. This is an unspent transaction output. So these are where your signatures sit. Your Bitcoins, your sats really are just signatures. So they're just like, let's see, from Bob to Alice. So let's say Dave sent Bob a transaction. When Bob received the transaction, what he actually received is a signature from Dave to Bob to receive what he has received. That goes into an envelope that is commonly called a UTXO. When Bob sends to Alice, this is the general illustration. What Bob does is he can do one of two things. Bob can literally send the signature, opening as many envelopes as necessary in order to send to Alice. Alice receives the signatures that are Bitcoin. So Bitcoins are signatures on a ledger. Alice receives those. So he can send them directly to Alice, and Alice can broadcast them to the mining network, and they can attest to the validity of those signatures, of those coins, okay? Coins and signatures are one-to-one simile in this explainer. Alice receives them. She broadcasts the miners. The miner says they were valid. Good. They're now her coins, right? The other way you can do it is that Bob can broadcast to the mining network and say, hey, mining network, can you look up this hash of Alice's address and can you send the signatures to Alice? And so Bob to miners to Alice is the other way that they can go. That's typically how it occurs in BTC. It's also typically how it occurs in BSV. But if you want to do true peer-to-peer, you can go simply from wallet to wallet, and the recipient can broadcast to the network. There are also situations, this is a little less common, where two mining nodes, two nodes that are capable of building blocks, may insert a transaction into the block and mine the block, and then it is valid on the whole network. And then you could see it that way. So without getting way more technical, which would really just be a boring conversation, I think, that's the basics of how Bob is actually sending a transaction of Bitcoins to Alice. So I hope that's clear. I hope we've cleared that up, and I hope everybody feels a little bit wiser about what Bitcoin is actually doing. What's the latest on Terranode and When Moon? So When Moon, I think are we on a full moon? The moon looked almost full last night. So if it is a waxing gibbous that I saw last night, then the full moon should be occurring any moment. But I'm not a lunatic, and therefore I was not paying attention to exactly where the moon is in its cycle, and so I don't know for sure. Latest on Terranode, so stuff is going really well. It's publicly released. You can go audit the code yourself. You can commit to GitHub right now if you have a suggestion. So even if you just wanted to help with documentation or the way something is phrased, you can do that. You can be a contributor to Terranode today. It is public in a public repo. It is source available, and we would very much appreciate your contribution. Gorilla Pool is contributing pull requests now to the public repo. We were working in the private repo as well when it was still in active development, but now it is a public project. So if you want to join, you want to make suggestions on how to make it better, faster, harder from a security standpoint, that would be very much appreciated by the team at BSVA, who has done a bang-up job. We were talking just internally about how awesome this whole subtree system is. At first, this was a pretty controversial thing when it was introduced, because I think a lot of people were kind of making it they were worried that it was something like a pre-consensus mechanism or kind of messing with the game theory of things. But now that people understand that subtrees are kind of an inherent property of Merkle trees and a Merkle tree-based system in the first place, people are realizing that, oh, wow, this is a really brilliant way to use the inherent cryptography of Bitcoin in order to make things more scalable. And so I'm super pumped. I've been pumped about Terranode for 6 years, 7 years. But as we've gotten to look under the hood over the last 9 months, we've been super excited about what we're seeing. And then ultimately, now that it is fully public and you can join, you can contribute, you can participate, it's a really good thing. Now, admittedly, it is not perfect. There's lots of little things that are kind of difficult, especially if you're used to using the classic Bitcoin, like RPC, API stuff. Your basic peer-to-peer network communications are very different in Terranode. And so if you were using an SV node to, let's say, feed UTXOs and other data to your wallet, a la basically the way Rock Wallet or Handcash or some of these other people might be connecting either directly to a node or to some miner-based API, those sort of API connections are quite different. And so they're quite a bit less mature than people might be used to. And so people that have experience in designing middleware or other systems designed to connect databases and networks to each other, like those kind of people would be really appreciated. So if you have some kind of high-level database expert or networking expert in your life who would like to contribute to a life-changing, world-changing computer science project, it'd be really cool if you bring them in and have them look at the Terranode project too. As for When Moon, man, that's the question. I get asked this once a month, twice a month, at least. Sometimes I get asked this on a daily basis by people, like, hey, man, what's coming? What are the secrets? Where's the alpha? I don't know, man. The fiat economy is crazy. The crypto economy is even crazier. And part of the reason for it is we just can't get past the fact that Tether just is a gigantic counterfeiting operation. Like if I were to come up with $1 trillion out of nowhere and I didn't have to attest to where it came from and it was all digital, I'd be the bad guy. And for some reason, they get to put a guy in the Treasury Department at the White House, and they get to have like really cool places in the Bahamas, and they get to be everybody's best buddy. And that makes me very concerned. And so I think if you were to take Tether and all like wash trading, insider trading, and weird market makers out of the system, I think the prices across everything would look very, very different. And that's across the board on BTC trading, Ethereum trading. This is all your DEX trading and all this stuff too. Like a lot of the smart contract trading and stuff that happens on Ethereum and Solana and other similar places. Things would look very different. And I think everything would trend down quite a bit until we found an actual floor for what is the actual demand, the non-crypto trading demand of anything that is a blockchain-based digital asset, I think looks very different. And in that situation, BSV then suddenly becomes very compelling and very competitive. And so I think if we can clean up the slop and the crime and the malfeasances, all of a sudden BSV is like, oh, hey, this one is better, faster, cheaper, more scalable, and all kinds of amazing things. And that's great, right? So anybody that's ever heard a pitch about a blockchain and why a blockchain could make something better than it was before, BSV is the best one. And it's what, $20 to $25 today? Like, what a compelling proposition. If BTC can be $120,000 a piece and BSV has all of the same fundamentals as BTC, but it is also way, 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 way more scalable, is it undervalued? So, but again, like how do we clean that up? How do we get there? And therefore, when moon? Anybody's guess? You tell me. I would be very curious to hear your thoughts about that, friends. When is the next blockchain convention event in the States? So there's lots of things going on, actually. I believe this week, guys like Connor Murray and Brett Banfi, I believe he likes to pronounce it in the French colloquial, so it'd be Bonfait. He is, that's not true at all. He doesn't ever say that. But they're at Mining Disrupt, which is, I think, in Houston this week, which is pretty cool. And then I will likely be attending in January the We Are Gonna Make It conference. So I'm going to need Carl again to strap into the saddle. We'll bring Chad and Steve out, my camera and lighting guys who are absolutely bonkers. Frankly, we should have a behind the scenes show on what our crew is like, because good grief, you have no idea how much fun it is to go to these conferences and have a good time. And frankly, people let us in because we just look like this motley crew of crazy, but then our content comes out and they're like, oh wow, you guys are great. So Chad and Steve both they've got experience, like Hollywood experience. They've worked for Disney and all kinds of other people doing lighting, sound, camera work. And they're a lot of fun. So we will see you at the We Are Gonna Make It Miami conference. I believe it's January 20th. So stay tuned for updates. We're going to keep you entertained. That's the goal here. 2 years ago, you had Peter Schiff on the show and talked about tokenizing gold. You could see the wheels turning in his head, and now Schiff Sovereign says they have a gold token coming soon. Archie, yes, indeed. Peter, so we kept a little bit of contact with Peter. And here's the problem with Peter. In a very basic sense, I like Peter. I've been a Peter Schiff fan for a long time. And that was one of my grail interviews. Like, I have wanted to talk to Peter Schiff for about 20 years. He was Ron Paul's pick to be, I think it was Treasury Secretary when Ron Paul was running for president. He was like, hey, we're gonna put Peter in charge of this. We're gonna bring sound money back to the United States. And that's been about as successful as closing a single military base around the world at all, or saving a single dollar. We are now $35 trillion in debt and a whole bunch of other stuff. But Peter is a lot more of an entertainer than people want to believe. And so I think a lot of what he does is very specifically for the Peter Schiff brand. Peter Schiff is more of a personal brand than he is his own person. And I don't say this as a criticism necessarily, but I want people to understand that Peter is not like day-to-day running Schiff Gold and these things. Like, it's a broker for these things. And I think there's a good chunk of his Bitcoin shtick that is just for marketing. He actually put out an ordinal project at least a year ago. It's probably a little more than a year old right now, on BTC as well. And, you know, Peter has a lot of really smart things to say. He is not a fool in any regard. But he's also, like, he's going to do the thing that makes him the most money. And the thing that makes him the most money is going to be looking for liquidity in the blockchain space, which is obviously going to come from BTC, Ethereum, Solana, and those other places. So If he wants there to be a gold token that people use as cash, he is going to learn very quickly why the liquidity side of the equation is not the scalable side of the equation. But I have a feeling he's not really going to care so much about blockchain-based speed. And so he is very much going to want to base things on liquidity because that's what's going to make the most sense for his business. And if those things don't scale, he only needs to pretend things are happening on the blockchain, maybe settle once an hour, once a day, once a week to the blockchain to just kind of say, hey, it's a blockchain project. But I would guess he would be very happy to just have things run in his own Schiff Gold database or whatever the heck he wants to call it. And then ultimately manage it the way that you would manage an internal banking application or Cash App or PayPal. Like, I think it would probably run like that. And it'll have some kind of a like, hey, and it's a blockchain app. Hey, isn't that great? Because he knows that will bring up like good marketing. People say, oh my God, we got him. Peter's becoming one of us. And that's just not the case. Peter thinks Bitcoin is a foolish idea. I did indeed convince him that BSV, properly scaled and properly integrated into the economy and therefore capable of doing gold tokens on the blockchain would be a good idea. Now, that was fantastic. I'm the blockchain guy that got Peter Schiff to agree that if these things could happen, and they can, by the way, that a blockchain would be a good idea. But that was a rhetorical victory. The real victory is when Peter is forced, because he wants things to run completely on a blockchain, to move things to BSV. And when does that happen? Your guess is as good as mine. I don't know, don't have any insights. He certainly hasn't called me to discuss it. Can't wait. Let's bring it up. Got another one. Yep. Carbon Craft. Can't wait for blockchain to be more widely used so BSV can come out on top. There is literally nothing else. It's funny. I said this a bunch of times over the last few days. So the Blockchain Futurist Conference is a really good example. They're primarily Ethereum people. Good people. A lot of people with good ideas. And that was really the most encouraging part, is a lot of people really wanted to see something groundbreaking. They want to disrupt things. They want to change the world. They want the world to be a better place, a freer place, a more transparent place. They want individuals to have more self-sovereignty because they love the technology. They see the vision. They see what this is capable of. But so few people are technical enough to understand these limitations. But when you get to sit and talk to them, when you get to say to the people designing some really cool business on Ethereum, and I get to tell them, hey, I've been here a long time. I watched everything from Crypto Kitties to the Gnosis ICO. I watched the EOS. I'm going to go from ICO to a functioning network to raising $4 billion and then to completely falling apart based on governance issues that turned into a gigantic civil war and forking into another, 2 or 3 blockchain projects that all hate each other and all, again, have no liquidity because they split the community over bickering. And this is the problem. This is consistently the problem with like libertarian self-government, which is kind of a fundamental aspect of coming to consensus, is that you are asking people to come together to make decisions together that are for the good of everybody. And in a world where we have a single blockchain where like Bitcoin is used by everybody, that works out and losers lose, and then they fall back into line and rejoin the party. But it's so easy to split the database, give everybody an airdrop token, and start your own network that's like a whole lot better because it does one little niche thing. And just given the nature of the personalities of entrepreneurs and libertarians and everything else, you just keep splitting it up. And guys like Amaury Sachet were famous for saying, everybody wins when there's an airdrop. Everybody gets free Bitcoins, essentially. And time has shown us that it's not the case. We actually all lose. Like, you spread out, you get what's called brain drain, because some of your smartest people are going to go this direction and some of your smartest people are going to go this direction. And instead of working together, now you're kind of working against each other, and you're competing in a way that doesn't make a better end product for the end user, because you start to split into a totally separate economy. And I often give a church analogy. Now, if you look at like the Roman Catholic Church, which is the largest group of people who call themselves Christians, right? If you go real early, you had the Eastern Orthodox Church split off. There was problems between Greece and Rome, and so they split churches. Now, the Greek Orthodox have split into various factions of other Orthodox, and then your Roman Catholics have split into other groups of Roman Catholics, or Irish Catholics, or whatever. You had the British split off and created the Anglican Church, or the Church of England. You had the Germans split off, and they created the Lutheran Church, which, funnily enough, thought of itself as a Catholic church until the death of Martin Luther, when they finally said, okay, look, we're a totally different denomination now. And I could go into like 100 different, I can go into about 10 different major schisms, but truly there's hundreds, if not thousands of denominations. And truly the difference between Presbyterians and Mennonites is like, what clothes do you wear? What instruments are you going to play when singing to Jesus? And those types of things are pretty trivial in the grand scheme of things, when the real goal is to build the kingdom of Christ on the earth. Like, that's the broad goal. Just like the broad goal of Bitcoin is to completely disrupt fiat money distribution, central banking, commercial payments, commercial and government identity systems, tokenized assets, all these things. We're talking about trillions and trillions of dollars of disruption, and people are arguing about how 5 transactions per second is better than 100 transactions per second because digital gold and blah, 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 blah. And it's the exact same thing. If you talk to a non-Christian about the trivial differences between various denominations of Christianity, you seem like a crazy person. And it's the exact same way for people that are not technically inclined or some kind of macroeconomist. When you start talking about the difference between, say, Bitcoin Core, Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin SV, Zcash, and Litecoin, and all these things that are essentially Bitcoin forks, people start saying, like, you guys all sound like essentially the exact same thing. Why are you fighting each other instead of working together on changing the world? And so it's just a gigantic pain in the ass. But I think, and this is my goal, that if you just keep explaining to people how a blockchain can disrupt things and why it is a good thing, people will want to participate in that revolution. And if they want to participate in that revolution, they will eventually make their way back to, Satoshi Nakamoto came up with a really good idea called the Bitcoin protocol, and it's only available on BSV. BSV is the only living implementation of the Bitcoin protocol, and therefore it scales to the whole world. It's in distributed consensus. Proof of work makes it that it is a viable decentralized system to fulfill these promises that are given when any one of your friends starts talking about blockchain. So pick your influencers from any one of the thousands of blockchains that exist, and ultimately their good ideas will eventually exist on the only network that can scale, or, and this is a pretty big or, but it's something to be considered, or we all lose. We can all lose this. If we bicker too much, we just schism out until we all fail. And so that's something that we all really need to deeply consider. Think about my producer. You're killing me. So he's shaking his head at me. No, impossible. Like I'm gonna fight about my one little detail. That opcode. If we don't have that op, you know what? Screw you. We're gonna go live on an island. So, all right, let's take another one. Does Handcash use the BRC100 protocol, and will an app built with Handcash be able to integrate with all the other wallets? As of right now, the answer is no. And I don't know. I've heard rumors that they are looking into it, considering it, etc. But nobody at Handcash has confirmed to me that they're going that direction. I can tell you that Gorilla Pool and sort of its adjacent parties are contributing to Yours Wallet, and Yours Wallet is upgrading to BRC100 compliance because we believe that it's a good idea. But Handcash has traditionally gone its own direction. They have said, hey, we care about UI and UX, and we think we're the best at it, and we think people are going to come our direction based on the fact that they have a really good UI and UX, which is kind of like the Apple computer strategy. Like, we're not going to use AI. We're like, AI means Apple intelligence at Apple, and we're just going to have everybody assume that AI means Apple intelligence because we're going to do AI the best. And that's a It's a cute idea. And when Steve Jobs was around, it worked because Steve was very early to very good ideas. And a lot of people try to make themselves like Steve Jobs without understanding just how brilliant Steve was at seeing the future and really seeing a future that only he could create. And it really is a both and. You have to have the vision and you have to have the drive. You have to have the patience too. It took Steve 15 years to create what it was that he envisioned. And then, since then, you get Tim Cook and some of these other people that have showed up and tried to keep that ball rolling. They're still running off of Steve's momentum. But, when was the last time we had a massive change in the way that consumer electronics are participated in? I could argue somebody like Sam Altman, maybe is close or he's starting to peck at that with like ChatGPT and some of these things. But same with Elon Musk and X and XAI and some of these things. But it's really hard to say that anybody has had as much of an influence on the way that people use technology as Steve Jobs. In the future, to pay a recurring bill with BSV and money, will I have to build a smart contract system or is there a plan designed for easy payments? So I think if you go back 20 years, 25 years, if you remember going to the store and using your credit card back before we had instant like swipe to pay or tap to pay technology. Tap to pay is now ubiquitous everywhere, but 5 years ago it wasn't in the US. Like we still had to do the swipe, you had to wait or whatever. But before then, there were these little, it's called NCR paper. It's like 2 or 3 sheets of paper. You'd stick it in a little machine and the machine had like a roller you'd put over it. So you'd go and roll over the thing. You'd have to mail that receipt into Visa or your bank or wherever else, right? And then somebody would have to manually account for it, like manually enter on a computer or a typewriter and do that work. And so I think we're still in that sort of NCR paper level of doing anything with blockchain. So a lot of people have integrated directly with people like Visa and MasterCard to be like Coinbase is a really good example. Coinbase came out really early, so did BitPay and a couple of those companies with a card that used the existing payment rails that were, have been managed for 30 years now by the big credit card companies. And they integrate with that and say, okay, if you use Coinbase kind of like a bank or BitPay kind of like a bank, you have a certain amount of Bitcoin sitting in an account, you can use Visa to convert the cash value at spot price or whatever when you swipe your card, and that's how you can spend your Bitcoin. And so it's pretty hacky and it's not very disruptive, but it's functional. Now, the flip side of that is, the kind of thing that I used to do around Chicago when I was, super new to Bitcoin is the places that I would go and typically get a hot dog or a beer or a milkshake or whatever. I'd say, hey, can I pay you in Bitcoin? I'll help you set up a Bitcoin wallet. And this is kind of the sort of evangelism that guys like Roger Ver were famous for doing as well. Talking about how this is the best money in the world, and if you hang on to it, it'll probably go up in value, and hard money matters, and blah, blah, blah. So let me set you up with a wallet. You can account for it however you feel like accounting for it, but let me pay you in Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash or whatever it was that he was talking about. And that works plenty well for what it is, but it's still very niche. It doesn't integrate with the rest of your point of sale systems and your accounting systems and all this stuff. What really needs to happen for this to work, because you're not going to turn everybody into like a libertarian activist or some kind of anarchist breaking away from the system, because most people just don't think that way. They really they got their bills to pay and they want to do their job and they want to go home and they want to watch The Bachelor or whatever sports ball season it is. And and ultimately, you need somebody to create an integrated system and integrate deeper than with like MasterCard. So you need to integrate with like the settlement companies or the actual point of sale companies, is like Ingenico and some of these other companies that actually create the point of sale systems. It should actually be easier now because you can integrate with like Square or Clover or some of these other companies that create these point of sale systems that are tap to pay, because a Bitcoin wallet can absolutely tap to pay. That is not a difficult thing to do. But again, you have to ask yourself, why are you doing it? The other problem here is that the commercialization of a Bitcoin wallet has been kind of hard to figure out. Like, why am I doing this? If I am not going to be a custodian of the asset and I'm not going to make a 5% spread or whatever by doing some kind of an exchange on the background where I'm custodying and I'm making a profit, why am I going to maintain the wallet? Why am I going to keep updating the wallet? Who is paying me to manage the wallet infrastructure and the point of sale infrastructure and all this other stuff. And so there's a bit of an incentive problem to figure out there. But ultimately, like, those are the things we need to make this kind of stuff ubiquitous. Like, money is a really great idea, but even money, if you were to talk to the people at money, what's the profit model? Like, how? Because this isn't cheap. It's not cheap or easy to call up Ingenico and say, hey, we'd like to add a module to your software, because to them, what's their incentive to change their software, potentially introduce bugs or security problems or whatever else, as well as regulatory and some of this other stuff. Now, the one thing that has me intrigued is that if you look at the Genius Act and the Clarity Act, they give us a lot of very clear regulatory framework for how to use stable coins in real world commerce. And that gets to a point where commercial entities can start to do that. Now, if you want to pay me in money, by all means, you can pay Kurt in money, you can pay Gorilla Pool in money. We're cool with that. But we are Bitcoin native people. Trying to get like Target or Walmart or somebody, like, those are behemoths. They're going to move at the speed of an ancient ship with sails on it. So to turn the sails to make this kind of thing happen, they need you to do a lot of that upfront legwork and explain to them a very clear value proposition as to why they need to change their systems in order to adopt your stablecoin. Are you going to bring in another 10,000 customers that wouldn't have shopped with them otherwise? Or is it just going to be you talking to some 15-year-old cashier about, like, all right, well, I want to pay with money and here's my Rock wallet and this and that? Like, it's got to be better than that. And I'm not really sure how to get there. How do one-set ordinals work? E.g., with money, is every cent a Satoshi? In such a case, if all the world was using Bitcoin on CBDCs, would the Satoshis run out? So essentially, yes. The one-set ordinals protocol, or really the ordinals protocol in general, uses a technology that you could call a colored coin technology. And so what you're doing is, let's say you take a quarter, right? And you paint that quarter purple so that it circulates in your own, like casinos used to do this. Say, hey, the purple coins are worth more when you spend them here. So spend them at the table and we'll give you 25 cents plus some other value that is only redeemable here. So you're turning a piece of fiat currency into a token that is worth more in a certain place. So you're kind of doing the same thing with ordinal technology. So what you're doing is each individual sat, of which there are 2.1 quadrillion, by the way, and you are able to paint each Satoshi as a very specific thing. The indexer is listening to the network and it sees, okay, somebody has moved this Satoshi, but this Satoshi is not just a sat. This Satoshi is a sat that has been painted with a money token, and therefore it is a penny or a dollar or a sub-cent or $1 million or whatever. Now, the way the BSV21 protocol works, which is what money is actually using in its own business, is you're kind of painting a single Satoshi with a fungible protocol, a non-fungible protocol for a fungible token. So the SAT contains a contract that distributes a certain amount of total fungible tokens, which a fungible token is something like a penny. Like, it doesn't matter when and where a penny is from, it's always worth a penny. And so that is defined in the protocol rules that are written on a single Satoshi. And then from that single Satoshi, each of the individual transactions that occur in it settle to that SAT. It uses an indexer, which is like essentially a layer 2 piece of logic that can parse that data and understand the value of what's been transacted. So it's a little bit more complicated than your simplest version of a colored coin. But to answer your question, are there enough sats for that? Well, you only need one sat to distribute the token, and then you are only using sats. You're moving the UTXO set around in order to settle your transaction. But the total number of your fungible tokens using BSV21 is essentially unlimited. So yes, you're using sats to finish the exchanges, but those exchanges are just making ledger entries, but those ledger entries are not consuming. So if you had $1 trillion, for example, on money, you're not consuming 1 trillion sats in order to use them. So you kind of get this endless possible supply of money with BSV21, which is part of the reason why I'm so supportive of it as a protocol. Can those purple quarters be washed and return to being a regular sat? Yes, they can. So you have to have a one sat wallet to even understand what it is. So if you have a one sat ordinals based wallet that knows how to read a one sat ordinal, it will treat it as its sat value and its ordinal value. But it's just like if you take the purple quarter out of the casino, that purple quarter is just a quarter. It's still a quarter. So I can leave casino and I can go to 7-Eleven and spend it on a Slurpee if I want, but they're not going to give me that casino value at 7-Eleven. They're just going to take its face value as that quarter. And so the answer is it's still a regular sat, and it was always a regular sat. And anybody can ignore what else is on it and still take it at its face value. But it would be wise for you to only do business in the economy where they recognize that it has that extra value too, because that extra value could be a penny, but it could also be a Van Gogh painting or something. So it would be really unfortunate to spend something like a penny when it's actually worth maybe thousands or millions of dollars, because that is something that is possible with the protocol. If you managed a marketplace where users could pay with either fiat currency via Stripe or BSV, how would you encourage them to use BSV? Would you promote any particular micropayments? So I think microcommerce is one of the obvious things, but you can also make it like, why not just give a discount? Like, just say, hey, it's just 3% cheaper if you make your purchase in BSV. That's the kind of thing a business owner can do. They can make that decision. Typically, it's going to be a small business kind of decision, because it's easy for a small business owner to say, yeah, whatever, we can just make that change and we can do that. But some of the other things that you can do is you can have it that, okay, hey, with every transaction, there's some kind of redemption token that comes along, or maybe you get some kind of coupon or a buy one, get one free if you pay in BSV. And so if you pay with BSV, it can start a new contract relationship with the person who is doing business, and it can feed you back, and any kind of coupons or tokens or other incentives, based on that technology. And so, yes, there is a smart money or intelligent money aspect to this that entrepreneurs absolutely can and should be playing with. But that's up to the individual entrepreneur to do it. Trump said he's upgrading the U.S. to a state-of-the-art crypto technology to update the backbone of the financial system, as it were. Who is advising him on this? And if they run with Metallicus, when patents? So it's funny. I recently looked into Metallicus in the first place because people keep asking me about this, and I really am unimpressed. It really just seems like a whole lot of pitch deck stuff. And pitch decks are great, and the website is pretty, but I'm not seeing where anything that they've done is fundamentally interesting other than the business model. But anybody can write a business model that is, interesting, but can it scale? I've seen no evidence that the Metallicus people have done anything to go any faster than any other blockchain out there. In fact, a lot of the things that I've seen show me that they're just pumping things offline. They're using internal databases. They got all these apps in this Metallicus ecosystem that is, it kind of is what it is. Now, who are these people? The people advising David Sachs, I think a lot of it is going to be Howard Lutnick. Lutnick is one of the guys that's really got Trump's ear on these things. I'm not a fan of Howard Lutnick. The other guys are David Sachs and Bo Hines. Bo Hines is the younger guy. He's like 27, 28 years old, kind of crypto native kid. He's also a partial advisor to Tether, and which is red flag the biggest in my opinion. But then David Sachs, like if you look at who Sachs is like this, absolute lizard venture capitalist guy who is, one of the real problems in the blockchain space. He's one of the people, like when I talk about the problems of venture capital or Silicon Valley generically, David Sachs is one of the key guys that I'm talking about, who just has this really problematic view of tell somebody something really exciting, raise a lot of money, and ultimately kick it down line. If we can all exit to Sequoia, cool, we made it. And did the business work? Did anybody make money? Did anybody actually get disrupted? Or was it just good for David Sachs and anybody that kind of went along on the ride with him? And that's a real problem. I really, really dislike the people that are advising Donald Trump in the blockchain space. And I think Donald, to his credit, actually wants this stuff to work. He seems to think that it's cool, and he seems to understand the basic way that this stuff can be disruptive. But then the people talking in his ear are, you get people that have been successful in the space, and the people that have been successful in the space have largely done it by being, marketing experts at the very best to absolute criminal scammers at the very worst. And where do we go from there? It's just it's not a great place to really start the conversation. And frankly, we got to do better. So that's how I feel about it. Is it better to incentivize customers using BSV or just set up the business to automatically convert payments to BSV? I really think it depends on the individual entrepreneur. There are some people that would want their payments to convert because they want to hold the asset themselves. But if you think about it, imagine trying to tell somebody why something is a really great idea, but you should also be giving that great idea to them, right? So it's like, hey, you should have BSV, so give me your BSV, right? Like that's two sentences that are kind of in conflict with each other. I think an interesting way to do it would be, hey, how would you feel about receiving your change back in BSV, right? Like, hey, just get a little bit. And a little bit just in case might be something that is a good thing for you. So like as far as incentives go, I really like the idea of having like tokenized coupon or tokenized incentives that aren't the asset itself, because I really think of BSV as a type of fuel, right? Like oil is valuable. I wish I had a lot of oil, but oil itself is, it's difficult to store and whatever, right? Like I want to have I want to have the base asset in a place that I can store it. Now, Bitcoin is cool because you can store $1 trillion worth of it in your pocket, but you're still holding onto this base asset that is kind of volatile and whatever else. This is why people created like futures trading and derivatives and some of these other things. And so as far as incentives go, like, sorry, people want to account for stuff in fiat. People think in fiat numbers, which is what we've seen in Bitcoin anyways. And so I think a fiat incentive or just a coupon back, like I'm if I go buy a slice of pizza and they say, hey, cool, you want to sign up for our thing? And if you buy 5 slices of pizza, you get one free. Like, yeah, give me the card, hit my punch card. And so just make it a digital punch card because that's the thing. I lose my punch cards all the time. And I think it's now Stripe has some kind of incentive program or like a loyalty program, for example, like Stripe and Cash App and some of these other people have a loyalty program built into their cash registers now too. But imagine if that loyalty program was more universal or more useful in some way. Like, hey, what if your loyalty program allowed you to then get points back on anything in the universe? Like, that's the real power of it. But it also requires a lot of coordination to do well. Let's take some more. Is USDC basically Coinbase's version of Tether? Are their holdings more trustworthy? The short answer is yes. It's a joint venture between Coinbase and Goldman Sachs, which may make you feel better or worse about it, depending on your disposition. But yeah, I don't know. Is it better? Maybe. I mean, at the very least, they're in the United States, and therefore, presumably, the United States has some kind of jurisdiction to keep them more honest. But if you look at the history of banking and finance in the United States, it's not exactly a field of roses, or maybe it is a field of roses because it looks nice and smells nice. And if you go play in it, you're going to get cut and infected. But yeah, it's I don't know. Maybe it's better. It's essentially the same thing, really. It's just it's another trusted derivative of fiat. So is what it is. I think Amazon is the most likely early adopter due to it being Bezos's baby. Maybe. I think Amazon is more likely to push out an Amazon stablecoin. Now, like that Amazon stablecoin could and should be on BSV. Like if they wanted it to be in distributed consensus, that would be awesome. And frankly, Amazon would be a really good company to say, hey, bank with us, use Amazon dollars, put those Amazon dollars into some kind of a smart contract, stake them essentially, like earn a little bit of extra interest. So I think Amazon really, if they're being smart, like Amazon has already turned into more of a logistics company than they have a retailer, right? Like most of the money they make is based on the fact that they have a really strong grasp on like internet management and logistics management for shipping, right? Much like Wells Fargo started as a shipping company and turned into a bank, Amazon, I think, really could turn into a bank over time. And if they were to do that, they don't have to use fiat at all. Amazon is big enough to issue A dollars or zone dollars, whatever the hell they want to call them. But they could be issuing money that gives an incentive to there. Like, hey, what if we give you an extra 2% off if you pay in Amazon dollars? And then if you keep those Amazon dollars on your account, we'll give you interest back and all these other things. Then all of a sudden they start to become like, what are we using commercial banking for in the first place? If I look at the money that my household spends, or the typical household spends among the people I know, a lot of people are spending money on Amazon every week, if not every day. I know some crazy people probably spending money on Amazon every hour. And if that money is just recursive inside of Amazon, like that's a huge thing. So that could be something I could see happening. And frankly, Amazon probably have a module looking into it, but I don't know when or if they'll have the balls to actually go into something like that. But I wouldn't be shocked if all of a sudden it was announced and they're going to give that a try. So keep your eyes open. Did Eric Trump seem to only care about speculation? No, actually. So the first thing that he said when he was on stage was talking about why Bitcoin really mattered to him specifically and to his family. And the first reason that he gave about it was based on the fact that his family had been debanked multiple times. So he talked about how, I think he said Bank of America and JP Morgan Chase both cut off bank accounts of the family. So presumably he's talking about Don Jr. himself and some of the other people in the family, simply because of the MAGA movement. So the Make America Great Again, the way he said it was, if you were wearing a red hat, you got debanked. And that was a big problem for them, obviously. And so then he went into like, hey, Bitcoin can't be stopped. They cannot take away or shut off my Bitcoin holdings, and that allows people like me to be able to do business despite the fact that we are, political rogues, we're politically inconvenient, or that people would like to silence us by financial censorship. And so that was where it started with him, which I really appreciated. He did talk about digital gold and some of your typical like, yeah, man, it's going to go up forever because it's provably scarce and blah, blah, blah. And gold's not as good because if gold gets too expensive, we'll start to, break up concrete to mine the gold out of the concrete. Like if gold was $50,000, it would make sense to start remining concrete for gold dust. And he's right. Now, as for, where he's at on Bitcoin, a lot of people, they really care about Bitcoin fundamentals for their own reasons, right? Like, They see Bitcoin for what it is because it makes sense for their business. And Eric Trump is one of those people that saw that in BTC. So he's mining BTC. He made a joint venture with Hut 8 Mining. And they're doing pretty cool stuff, frankly, because they're getting themselves adjacent to the energy industry. And I think if you were to have a serious conversation with him about the Bitcoin Civil War and why BSV matters, I think he'd be interested. He seems like an open-minded guy who's very passionate and knows what he believes and why he believes it, but he has an open mind enough, presumably, to see why there are problems with BTC. And so the other interesting thing is that the company also joint ventured with a company called Griffin Mining, and Griffin Mining was running BSV nodes until very, very recently when they seem to have dropped off. But Griffin's an interesting company that is worth looking into in their history with BSV, which is mostly quiet. So that's the top of the hour. I'm Kurt Wuckert Jr. We're actually going to record. We should record for Rad TV. We're going to get super spicy because it's just Kurt, just the Kurt perspective on things. So if you have not watched, if you're not a Rad TV subscriber, you should subscribe to Rad TV to see the extra spicy, super censored version or uncensored version of the show here at the CoinGeek Weekly live stream. So I'm Kurt Wuckert Jr. Everybody, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for tuning in every week. Your subscriptions mean the world to me. They give me something to do every Tuesday. And next Tuesday, I will be back in my office. I will be where I usually am. And I'm looking forward to talking to you next Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So again, like, subscribe, hit the alert bell, and be good to each other. Because if we can't be good to each other, then the rest of it, none of it, is worth a damn anyways. I will see you next week. Kurt Wuckert Jr. saying goodbye.